What's up?
How are you?
Guys, I'm here with Rage. And Rage, I like you, bro. You're so awesome. But people who don't like you because they don't know you, can you let us know about who you are?
Well, there's people that don't like me who do know me.
Let's get that out of the way first. Well, let's just get to the point then. Like, why are you on the show? You know, what makes you somebody we should be listening to, bro?
Jeez. So we've you and I met at Black House a couple years ago. You were there with Jared and the Machitas.
Yes.
Both Chenzo and Lyoto. And you and I crossed paths, and we've been partners in crime ever since then.
I asked you some questions, and you answered them, and I was like, whoa. You're like this gangster-looking dude, and I'm like, you know, maybe I judge you a little bit, but I wasn't expecting that. Those were some really sharp answers, bro.
Cool.
But
cool.
What do you do? What do you do over there? What's your thing?
I am a professional licensed boxing coach, kickboxing coach, and MMA coach. I have a small team of mixed martial arts fighters. We're called the IRE division. My system of fighting is called IRE, E-Y-R, Engage Your Rage. And that name right there creates a reaction of people either coming to me or running the fuck away from me. And both are perfectly acceptable.
Well, what kind of people run away from when they hear Engage Your Rage? And this is supposed to be my professional strength and conditioning and MMA coach. And what's rage got to do with it?
Right. So there's a lot of, what do we call it? Woo-woo in martial arts, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And see, I believe that martial arts, the root word is martial, comes from the god of war, Mars, which means warlike arts. So I believe in keeping Mars in martial arts.
You're a traditionalist. You're a classic. You're a TMA guy.
But a lot of systems have focused more on the spiritual side or the personal development side or influences of Taoism and Zen, and and I'm not opposed to any of that. It's just that's not me, right? But that doesn't mean I'm not spiritual. That doesn't mean I don't jive with the Zen and the mind, no mind, all that. I'm down with that.
Because people will make assumptions that you're not down with that, right?
Right.
Because you believe in this side, it automatically defaults you to not be a fan of the other side. That's not the case.
Exactly. Right. If you're not pro this, you must be con that or anti that. Right. And no, I can only teach from my experience and my understanding. And my experience is extremely violent and competitive.
You did this for a little while where you were a pro fighter or semi-pro, or like, what do you even call that era?
What do you even call that era? It's called the Dark Ages, the Dark Ages of MMA. So originally, the UFC hit the scene in late '93, early '94. Now, we didn't really have the internet back then. So the only way it was seen was pay-per-view through cable. And when it first came out, it outsold pay-per-view, professional wrestling, and boxing. So there were profit margins being threatened. So politicians, namely John McCain, hopped on board and banned the sport. And so it got kicked off of Cablevision, Time Warner, and one other big conglomerate. So basically, it was impossible to see MMA on pay-per-view. So back then, the event would happen, and then you would wait, and then you'd go to the video store and you get a VHS, and you'd watch the fight on VHS. So that's at the high level of the promotion, and that during that time, the UFC almost went bankrupt. So all my fights, except for 2 of them, were illegal. MMA only became legal in New York State in 2016. It only became legal in California in 2006. At the time, from 97 to 2001, I was living in New York City. And so I really thought the world was going to be different. I thought as a culture, as a species, I thought we were going more hardcore. So I thought MMA is going to fix boxing. I thought, oh, this is fighting. This is what it's really about. And I was completely wrong. Boxing corrupted MMA.
Whoa. So, what? That's a whole other talk. What? Bro, you can't just say something like boxing corrupted MMA and just, oh, let's move on.
And let's move on.
Boxing.
Well, when I fought, like I said, it was illegal. So I'm not a big fan of talking about those times because
right.
It was illegal, which makes me a criminal. There are very few rules. And the rule set that I fought under, we wore cups and mouthpieces. That was our equipment. We didn't tape our hands. It was bare knuckle, bare shin. It was fighting, right? But headbutts were allowed, elbows anywhere were allowed. So fights were over, right? Now you take somebody down, you get back mount, you barely have a target to hit.
Mm.
Back then, you could elbow in the back of the head. It was over, pop, 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 3 strikes, you're done, right? And then we did stupid shit like tournaments, 3 fights in one night. Like,
wow. Can you talk to me first of all about like the training camps leading up to this? Were they as sophisticated as they are now?
No. It wasn't a sport, right? So you were piecemealing everything. I did train. Me personally, I trained with a boxing coach. I trained at a JKD school. So I had good Muay Thai fighters, and I had boxing experience, and I had, back in the early 90s, I got my purple belt in jiu-jitsu in 1999.
Okay.
Made me a fucking unicorn in New York. There was like 3 black belts in the city and no brown belts and a whole bunch of blue belts and a whole bunch of white belts. Different times anyway. So
training, yeah. Like how much lead? Okay. Let me ask you a question. What was the shortest amount of time where you accepted a fight to fight night?
Bro, I fought, it was so fucking stupid. I fought weekly, several times a month. Like I said, I would fight 3 times in one night for a tournament. It's ridiculous. But
what would you win? What would you win at the end of the night if you came out on top, something like that?
Well, okay. So most of my fights were organized through.
Sure.
Yeah. So I got paid pretty well.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. Yeah. Cause I've heard stories of similar type environments where they barely got paid anything, barely worth their time. And they may have taken a loss because, they have to make their way down there. And
yeah, that wasn't I was in New York City,
right.
Which is just a hotbed of corruption. And so yeah. The reason MMA was illegal for so long was political infighting. And anytime there's a large profit on the black market, things stay illegal as long as they can.
Right.
There was good money, right? Okay. Right. Good money for me at the time doing that. So yeah.
So let's look at this. Let's like, are you reading the bottom banner? What CSAC is a California State Athletic Commission,
That is
right? So
right.
going from this brawler in New York, making coin in these semi-legal fights and taking them on short notice. I'm formulating this profile of who this person is, and then you make this transition, right? Now this is who you are. You are this guy. You're a licensed professional. Did you ever think you'd ever see the day? You're a licensed professional trainer.
Speaking of seeing the day, I just turned 50.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
You look good, man.
Thank you. Back then, I was not expecting. I thought my life expectancy was 37. I was convinced that that was it, right? So no, this wasn't, looking back, it's like, oh, I have all these experiences now that make me a great coach. But I never set out to be a coach or a trainer or an educator. None of that stuff. Right?
Not every great fighter gets to become a great coach. What do you attribute that to?
Few can transition. Fighting and coaching are completely different skills and completely different desires, right? Yeah, it takes a big heart and a certain personality to be a coach, and it takes a different personality. I guess that's the thing, right? I'm fucking crazy.
That answers that.
Completely different personality to be a fighter. To be a fighter, you have to be selfish and borderline narcissistic and aggressive.
A coach is the opposite of that, right? You have to care more about this other human being.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look at all my fighters as, I don't want to say children, as my children, but besides my cat, like, I take the best care of my fighters. I give them everything I possibly can. I give them focus and attention and now my success is dependent upon their success. So I invest everything that I possibly can energetically and so forth.
I mean, before we talk about your role as that and getting into the heart and everything, I think this is a good moment to actually begin to talk about what we came here to talk about, right? Which is, is strength a skill? Does it transfer? You transferred, you made a transition from fighter to coach. And I believe, in my world, right, if I'm going to be a producer who tells an editor what to do, I've edited. I know the hardships, right? And so I'm better able to set expectations, right? I'm better able to communicate with them, things like that. You see a correlation here with your past life and your current life and how that transferred?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few outliers of coaches who have not competed, who have not fought, but they're the exception to the rule. And if you look hard enough, they still fought. They just didn't fight in formal competition or, is rugby fighting? I think it is.
I think it's fighting. Hell yeah, rugby's fighting. Talk to Jared Wihungi about that. Not is only the sport fighting, but there's fights that happen after the sport.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
The strength and speed specialist that I use works in professional rugby, works in international rugby. He's an international consultant, and so he's like, I've never fought. I'm like, bro, you played rugby. That's close enough. Same thing with hockey. Anyway, so I think that the competition experience is critical, and I believe that fight experience is critical. But that's only a small portion of it, right? And the expression is, different asses for different seats. That there has to be the right fit. I am not the right coach for a lot of people, but I am the right coach for a few people. and I can only coach a few people at a time anyway. So it has to click, just like, you know, a psychotherapist or
sure,
right?
Sure. So speaking of transfer, actually, before I get to that, what kind of people gravitate to you, and what kind of people don't?
Surprising the people that don't gravitate to me. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, you don't want to be a champion? What do you? Okay. So it's what I would think would repel people. So one of the things of ire is something that we refer to as the one bell mindset, the one bell philosophy, and people misinterpret that, right? One bell is about intention and focus. One bell rings, the fight's over before another bell rings, because you go out there with the intention and the intensity to finish the fight.
Right. It isn't a false sense of confidence, right? It's not that. This is a philosophy going in.
It also doesn't mean that we knock everybody out in the first round, right? But we fucking try.
That's all we could really ask.
Yeah.
Knock this dude out.
And so it's a mindset. It's a style of fighting. When it comes to MMA, I think there's basically three different styles of fighting, and
okay,
and they're categories that I kind of made up. But you've got what I call Mars fighters, right? God of War. What we do, the one bell mindset. You fucking run it, and you take everything that the resistance to the one bell mindset are the yeah buts. Yeah, but I don't want to get caught. Yeah, but I'm afraid to get tired. Yeah, but right. And it's like, that's what training's for. That's what technique is for. That's what head movement's for. So all your yeah buts are just excuses that you're willing to accept. It's a power-based style. It's a sprawl and brawl based style. But the intention is to finish the fight, period. Right. So when I interview new fighters, and what pushes a lot of people away is I say, listen, if you lose by a decision or if you win by a decision, I'm unhappy either way. You didn't do your job. You didn't finish the fight. Now, sometimes there's exceptions to that, obviously, right? That it went to a decision. It was a split decision. It was a fucking phenomenal fight. Well, guess what? You get a fight of the night bonus. Okay, I guess I'm getting a percentage of that. I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
But, so there's the Mars fighter. Then there's what we call the bell-to-bell fighter. And the bell-to-bell fighter, to me, is morally apprehensible. It's an affront. I'm so offended that it exists. But MMA is a sport. And so the bell-to-bell fighter intends to win rounds and not hunt the finish and not try to just win the round. And they gamify, they kickbox for the first excellent and then steal a takedown and sneak the round, and okay, fine. And that's a style that is out there. And there are some guys that are phenomenal at it. And ultimately in the rule set, my opinion is wrong and they're right. You win the rounds, you win the fight. Okay, cool. But you didn't win the fight. Right. And then the final skill set or the final style of fighter is what I call grinders. The Diaz brothers, right? They aren't built for explosive power. They don't have the one punch knockout, but their mindset is still, I'm going to finish you.
Right.
I just want to drown you to finish you and make you want to quit. Right. So
give us some names real quick for that second character, that round to round fighter. Who are some recognizable?
The Diaz brothers are probably the best example of that. Many of the wrestlers, Usman, not really, right? Because he's got the one punch knockout, but sure, his style is more of a grinder.
Are wrestlers typically that style?
Well, wrestlers either no, it's a personality thing, right? Because wrestlers can do bell to bell because they never get tired, right? They can
be Mars
because they got that one punch, right? Or they can grind you and finish it. It's really more based on training styles, personality, and genetic dispositions. Right?
Is management style in that matrix? Yeah.
I would think so. Okay. Yeah. Right. So yeah, we're Mars fighters. We're pressure fighters. We go to finish the fight, and you don't get paid overtime for extra rounds. So why do the extra rounds?
So talk to us now about how you train them to be IR fighters. How do you craft them to be? Right. Talk to us about some of your methodologies, philosophies.
Because it seems like we wouldn't care about technique. It seems like we would just be mindless brawlers that, you go berserk. And so there's a meme going around right now. It's a pie graph, and there's a sliver of yellow, and then the rest of it's blue, right? And it's something like, why the average guy thinks he can win a street fight or something like that. Right? And the little sliver of yellow says he's a trained fighter. And then the blue is, brah, you don't know my mentality. When I see red, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And to me, it's like those things are not exclusive. You can train and see red and make bodies hit the ground. So when we train, we're hyper technical, right?
Huh. Okay.
Look at Mike Tyson. Everyone back in the 80s thought he was a brawler, but he has the best footwork, the best head movement, the best evasive skills, the best defense, right? Which enabled his God-given, horrifically powerful offense, right? So, yeah.
Same approach, yeah. So you guys focus on the technical. How do you cultivate, all right, and get into the point, right? How do you cultivate strength? And is strength a skill? And does it transfer? That's a lot, but let's talk about some of your strength and conditioning philosophies.
Right. Okay. So we're about to get real. Anyone that hasn't heard me speak before, you might want to turn it off now.
And I'm going to stay as quiet as possible because I don't really understand a whole lot of this stuff.
Right. So
go ahead.
If I can explain it in a way that's the challenge, right? The whole thing about strength and the whole thing is, what do we do? What do we do? Everybody knows that you want to be faster, strike harder, be stronger, and not get tired. Right?
Easy.
But right? But what if you're not already prone to all those things? How do you train to increase your speed, power without sacrificing your cardiovascular endurance? How do you have the one bell mentality and not gas yourself out? So that's that. So that right there, that's that concept of what exercises do you do? What is your program design? That falls under the category of what's called athletic transference. And that basically means, how does this thing that we do impact this thing we want to do? Does that make sense?
It seems fairly straightforward to me.
Okay. So I made a post, and all this came out of a post in the Aperture Fight Focus forum. And it started with me ranting and bitching. And I saw a video of a guy on YouTube who is well-educated, and his thesis was flawed. So he was talking about deadlifts, and are deadlifts good? Are they bad? And it came out of one of Joe Rogan's guests saying, don't do deadlifts if you're not a strong man, because you go to any NFL camp, any blah, 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 blah. They're not doing deadlifts. They're doing power cleans and hang cleans. And it's so, like, the Joe Rogan podcast is so bro sciencey, and it's like, okay, you're a strong man, but you have your PhD in biomechanics? No. You went to school for no. Okay, so you have a lot of experience, but you don't really have any education, and that's a big problem. The people with the most education tend to have the least experience. The people with the most experience tend to have the least education. It's a gross generalization, but you know, that's the industry as it is right now when we're talking about professional strength and conditioning. So, and then everything that exists in the profession of strength and conditioning is amplified and even worse in professional combat sports. In professional combat sports, the trainer or the strength coach gets hired based on who else he trained or who knows who, or, you know, it's not, you know, I have a resume. You know how many people have ever asked me for my fucking resume? None. I've gotten hired for several elite professional boxers because I trained a world champion for one camp. And that champion was with me when he won the belt, and he wasn't with me when he lost the belt. So obviously it was me. But
that's self-deprecating. This is why are you doing this? You're being honest. You're being honest. Yeah.
8 weeks of a strength coach does not. It helps, but that's not why he lost the fight. He sold the belt. Is what really happened, right? Which happens all the time. And I've never been able to sell anything for millions of dollars, so I can't fault him for that. But what I'm saying is it's not a merit-based profession. It's a PR-based. You know, who do you know, and who knows you, and who did you work with, and you know. So because that's the way the freelance works, there's not a whole lot of systems and checks and balances as to, well, okay, well, we're doing this. Why are you doing that? Well, because I saw so-and-so's coach do it.
And it spreads, right? And it spreads unchecked, and it becomes common knowledge, and then it becomes harder to fight that.
Exactly. Way. And then it gets on a huge podcast, and so-and-so says it's good, so it must be good. And then, you know, I have been, for lack of a better term, fighting passive stretching for more than 15 years now. The science the data is perfectly clear that for most of what we are told passive stretching does, it doesn't do that. And it doesn't help. It hurts most of the time.
What's a passive stretch, real quick?
So passive stretching is what most people know of as stretching. So, you know, when you were in junior high and they had you sit on the ground and lean forward and grab your foot.
All that stuff. That's passive stretching, and you're saying that shit don't work. That doesn't do nothing. Well,
it's less than optimal, especially for elite athletes. Okay. So the rub is that in their mind, people have stretching and flexibility commingled and synonymous.
Yep.
Right. Flexibility is good. Passive stretching is not the best way to improve your flexibility. And there's different types of flexibility. There's active, there's passive, and there's a category which is uncontrolled. So I didn't know we were lecturing about flexibility today, but all of those forms of flexibility, passive flexibility, active range of motion and your uncontrolled range of motion are normal things. But what we want to increase as athletes, and well, most people too, is the active range of motion, the part that we can control and actively work through. The passive is something else moving the joint. We don't want that. And the difference between the end range of your active and the end range of your passive, that's the uncontrolled range of motion. And that's where injuries occur. It's uncontrolled. So sorry about that tangent, but so I've been, fighting this for 15 years, but because, you were taught in junior high school and then this person does it and that person does it.
Yeah. You got to stretch, right?
You got to stretch. You have to, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what the literature shows. It's not what the data shows. And I'm not saying that there's no place for it. I'm just saying it's misunderstood and most of the time misused, right? And
this is something that is so fundamental to activities in general. And here you are, you've been trying to fight it for 15 years. What else have you been fighting, bro? And what else? I mean, so why shouldn't like a UFC heavyweight championship contender be, powerlifting? Or
well, so okay. Let's getting back to athletic transference.
Yes.
Which is, where this whole thing kind of came out of. And I made some statements in my posts that by strictest definition are wrong. It's like rules are there until you're good enough to break the rules. I'm good enough to break the rules. That's what we're doing. But why am I doing it? So the whole discussion, we kind of is skill strength. Yes, it is. Absolutely. But my question was, how do we delineate between strength and skill? And so it's directly relevant to athletic transference. So you brought up powerlifting. What powerlifting is great for is increasing what's called absolute strength. Now, absolute strength pretty clearly is like how fucking strong you are without other parameters, right? It doesn't take into consideration relative strength. It doesn't care how big or small or just absolute. It doesn't care about time, okay? So the biggest thing that you can lift, the heaviest thing you can lift, and it takes as long as it takes. Let's see how strong you are. Absolute strength. And actually, the reason powerlifting is so great at that is because that is what powerlifting is. It's the essence of powerlifting.
It's isolated. You have the time. Do it when you can, right? Is that that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
All that matters is the tonnage.
I see where you're going.
Okay.
Please continue. I see where you're going. Okay. If you get me to understand this, bro, like you should win an award. But please continue.
All right. As long as I'm not having under a time constraint, I think we got it. And we start talking about silly shit too. But so
it happens.
Yeah. All right. So with the powerlifting, there are specific lifts, right? Deadlift. We've already talked about it. Let's bring it back. So deadlift is a barbell on the ground. You grab it, you lift it, you pick it up. And okay, yeah, maybe it's a little bit more complex than that, but for the purpose, it's lifting shit off the ground. There's a barbell, grab it, lift it, stand up with it, bring it up, lock your knees out, stand tall. That's the deadlift. Deadlift, you can usually lift a whole bunch of weight. So as a power lifter becomes more proficient at powerlifting, the weights increase. Some of that is just raw absolute strength, but some of that is the neuromuscular coordination of actually lifting the bar more efficiently, lifting the bar in a straighter line and coordinating the muscles specific to that skill. So the exercise itself is a skill that requires great strength and builds great strength, but it also, the more you do it, the better you get at it, increases skill. So my question that can't be answered is, where do we delineate between skill and strength? Or how do we delineate between skill and strength? Because the absolute strength can be used elsewhere. The skill of lifting a barbell straight up and the specific neurological engram and the coordination and the specific skill of the deadlift cannot be used anywhere else except in the deadlift. So as you increase your skill through time, effort, repetition, you are increasing the weights, but not getting the athletic transfer. But what is it that actually transfers? And the paradigms of strength is what transfers. The specific neuromuscular skills do not transfer.
What are some of your working theories on how we figure this out? What are some experiments that you must have thought of some, you know?
Well, so because the great enemy of our training is time and money, which just is time. If we had unlimited amount of time, then we could, our exercise selection, our program selection, our program design would not be as critical as it is now, right? So a lot of people only get to train with their strength coach. A lot of people, okay. So in professional combat sports, at the interim level and the higher level, many athletes only get to train with their strength coach 2 times a week. That's 2 hours of training. So you have to get the biggest bang for your buck with the exercises that you choose. And so you have to forego to do an Olympic lift properly is years of skill work. And you're doing years of skill work to get good enough to hopefully reap the power, speed, and explosivity from that skill. Is that right?
When it counts. When
it counts in whatever athletic endeavor, right? So for us, punching people in the face, we'll go there.
Cool.
So
it is what it is.
So my history back in the mid-90s, I knew I was already fighting, and I knew that I knew a little bit because I was a decathlete and a swimmer throughout high school. And I started fighting pretty soon after high school. Actually, I was fighting in high school, but so I had some athletic experience, but neither of those sports back in the 80s and 90s did weight training. So I had to learn weight training. And when I was fighting, I was like, man, I need to find somebody to teach me this shit. And what I discovered was that in the early 90s, the only people that knew less about strength and conditioning than martial artists were fitness professionals.
Okay. Makes sense. Wow. Okay. Wow. All right.
So now this is back when weights made you slow. Right. So for those of you who weren't around in the 70s and 80s, it was common knowledge that weights, you don't lift weights if you're a boxer or a martial artist, because weights make you slow. And then Mike Tyson hooked up with, I forget who it was, Lee Priest, maybe, I don't know, a professional bodybuilder, started lifting weights and kept knocking everyone out. So, all right, that's not true. And then every fucking lineman in the NFL lifts weight, and they're pretty fast. So little by little, it's like, okay, weights don't make you slow. Mm-hmm. Long story short, there wasn't anybody who had the knowledge that I needed. And so I set out to learn it myself so I could train myself, so I could be my own strength coach as a fighter. And so I did a lot of reading. I got involved with a program, certification, resistance training specialist, and Tom Purvis's program. And it is one of the most comprehensive exercise mechanics certifications, education that's out there. And so I started out, you know, as a personal trainer, learning it, and I was paying my bills through personal training. And then I kept going, progressing until I took the mastery course, which was really intensive. Several weekends out there studying sun up, sun down, doing cadaver anatomy, highly intensive. Yeah, so I became my own strength coach. And I've lost my train of thought.
Was there anything from that period of time, that, you know, that high volume of learning, that that you remember to this day as being surprising? Like, holy shit, this is huge. You know, like what was your biggest takeaway from that period of time?
I'm always amazed at how much shit I learned. Like, because you know, when I was, I'm dyslexic, so reading is actually painful for me. And a conversation that never happened except in my head this afternoon. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts, and but Kevin Seaman, he is my first Sifu ever, and he has a program called Mindcast. And so I was listening to Mindcast, his podcast today, and I found out that he's dyslexic. He's published 8 different books and does so that whole excuse, the conversation that never happened was like, yeah, I don't write shit down, I don't take notes, I don't do it that way, that doesn't work for me, I'm dyslexic. And his response would be, so am I, now what, asshole? Except you. Right. So anyway, I'm amazed at how much shit I learned because it was relevant to my goal of fighting and not getting my ass beat. And at the time, it was a tremendous advantage so during the dark ages, when I was fighting, the strength and conditioning, not very good. And the guys that had good strength and conditioning were also juiced to the gills. There was no drug. There was a lot of the drugs that they were using had severely negative impact on their cardiovascular system. So they were strong for a couple seconds, and then then
they're done.
Then they were done. So going in with a comprehensive training program, strength training program, and what we call conditioning, gave me a tremendous advantage, because I was as explosive and powerful and strong as the guys that were on the drugs, and I was able to maintain my cardiovascular and stay strong and explosive.
Can you simplify for us how you're able to do that and how you're able to do that for your athletes now, where you can develop strength without sacrificing cardiovascular capabilities?
Yeah, well, so it's program design, and periodization it's about going through specific phases to get the specific results that you want, and being in a specific phase for the optimal or right amount of time, and then transitioning to the next phase, right? So earlier I mentioned the paradigms of strength, right? So when I talk about paradigms of strength, people, they gloss over and
what does that mean?
What does that mean, right? And then, so I'm like, okay, well, we can try and pull out your phone, Google what a paradigm is, and then it's a model or an expression of the way things are. What the fuck are we talking? So I like to say expression, right? Which, okay, colloquially, it's adequate, it's good, but scientifically, it's not right. But I like, the expressions of strength. You've got endurance, you've got absolute, and then you've got power and speed. Speed and power are on the one end of the spectrum. Endurance is on the other end of the spectrum. Absolute strength in the middle of the spectrum. Each of those paradigms, each of those expressions have pros and cons. And you want to maximize the benefit, minimize the risk. So that's what it's all about, program design, and optimizing how you train your skills, right? Which brings us back to the original, what's a skill and what's strength? And if I have to keep my strength training separate from my skill training, how do we delineate what's skill and what's strength? And how can we, right? So we have to think of it that way. Just like we have to delineate between speed and power, because there's speed training and there's power training. Yet speed, there's no power without speed.
Yeah, there's a correlation that's built in and ever present.
Exactly. There's no power, difficult. There's no speed without power, especially when we're looking at the neuromuscular system. And if I'm eating Cheerios, or if I'm doing a bicep curl, or if I'm trying to rear naked choke the fuck out of somebody, those are all the same muscle groups. Yet somehow they're all very different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how does that work? And where's the skill? Where's the strength? Where's the, and I could go on for a couple of hours talking about activation capacity, which is the neuromuscular mechanism that it helps us differentiate between eating Cheerios and rear naked choking. But that was more to illustrate a point. It's the same muscle groups, it's the same kinetic chain, yet it's completely different. So lost my train of thought again.
That is okay. So let me keeps it real for you, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. When you have a fighter in front of you, right? Do they get to hear all of these thoughts that go through your head, or is it like work time? Because you're still trying to figure this out, right? What makes them trust you enough to go, yeah, I'm going to go work with this guy?
I don't know if it's true or not, but the folklore is that the Kalishnikov, his favorite proverb was, "The best is the enemy of good enough."
One more time.
The best is the enemy of good enough.
Right. A lot of time can be wasted seeking perfection, right?
Seeking perfection, right? And just because I'm striving for the best doesn't mean that we don't already have good enough.
That's right. And we could be wasting a lot of time seeking or trying to accomplish something that could be reallocated to something else that would serve the purpose.
Exactly. So
right.
the the learning, the improving, that's consistent. That's always striving to make improvements, and the improvements that we make, you know, it's on a stopwatch. It's, oh wait, we found that we get better results with this person if we give him exact, you know, between 30 and 45 seconds rest rather than 90 seconds rest for this specific, right? But the other thing is all individual specific also.
Right.
You know, one of the things that our coach, our strength coach, Matthias, one of the things that I'm just blown away, his ability to work with multiple people at once, because he comes from team sports. He comes from working with the rugby team on the fucking field, and some of them are illiterate, and
wow,
and he can juggle that, you know, where in the weight room we'll have a dozen to half a dozen fighters in there, all on a similar program, but then all with their own specific.
Right. And it's difficult because they're individual fighters. The fighting is not a team sport, right? Whereas if you're a football coach, then you can kind of reallocate how you're going to train each member of this team to optimize their role within that team. Right. But fighters are different. It's almost like when you have 5 fighters in a room, you could have 5 teams in a room because they're all unique and they all have their individual character. It's difficult to do.
And then add to that the chaos of fight contracts and fight schedules, where you sign a contract and you're in camp and all of a sudden the schedule changes. So that was the biggest challenge that I had when I started working with professional boxers as a strength and conditioning coach. Oh wow, like a couple decades ago. Every now and then I just get blown away at how old I am. Like, fuck, I've been doing it this long. Oh,
I'm still alive. That's awesome.
The biggest struggle that I had was I would set up the perfect program. Perfect 8-week program. Well, guess what? Now you only have 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, guess what? That fight's not happening. Now you got to figure out some shit to do for the next 4 weeks because now it's right.
Or there's a new fighter, you know. There's so many things, bro.
Yeah. And that was when I was working one-on-one program designed for one athlete. Now we got a team of athletes, right? And it's like, okay, well, this person's in camp, that person. So compromises have to be made. Special attention is given to the person that's in camp at the moment. But I'm always amazed at Matthias's ability to fucking make it work. And everyone is, see, the bottom line is, are they getting faster? Are they getting stronger? Are they not getting injured? And are they getting better? Yes. Okay, good. Then we got something.
That's reliable, right? You know, if you can hit all those marks, you can say you're making progress and you're moving forward.
Yeah. Really
really simple, it seems. But I'm not a coach, you know, I'm not having to manage all of these thoughts. You have to do that. And so
close the blinds for a second. I'm getting,
yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Guys, this is super fascinating, even for like a noob like me. I'm beginning to get, and I really appreciate this, that I understand these things are incredibly complex, right? And we're on a podcast where we're trying to get people to understand. And I feel like you've done a pretty good job at that. So, go ahead.
I don't know if we actually hit on this or if, so as we spoke about before, speed and power cannot be delineated. Yet we have to delineate them to emphasize speed over power, because we have speed training, we have power training, and in the industry, there's something called the force velocity curve, which
force velocity curve.
Okay, sorry.
What is it? Please explain.
Okay, so it's not. It's a tool that's used, but it's not actually right. It's not actually accurate. But we use it so that we kind of understand and can kind of say, oh, well, we're on this end and not that end. So if you are generating large amounts of force, you usually need time to do it. If you are generating high amounts of velocity, you need no time to do it. So you fall, it's a curve. On one end is the force and one end is the velocity. And so, you know, strength and speed seem to be on opposite ends of a paradigm,
right?
Or opposite ends of a spectrum. But they're completely interwoven. And skill, athletic skill, every amount of athletic skills requires exactly the right amount of strength. So skill and strength can't be separated from each other. Yet, to make it practical, to make it useful, to make it achievable, we have to separate them. So something else that's really important, there's something called simulation training.
Okay.
Which is doing your skill with resistance. And long and short of it is simulation training almost always makes you slower, less accurate, and degrades the skill.
Really?
Yes.
So let's say if when we're talking about punching people in the face, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Just me punching somebody in the face. If I add resistance to that,
yes,
using a band, right?
Yes.
That's what you're talking about. Yeah. You're saying no bueno, not good.
No
Don't do that.
bueno. No bueno.
Really?
Really?
That's
unless you're working with somebody who understands strength profiles, resistance profiles, and kinematics and joint angles and joint function, unless you are dealing with, like, so Dr. Gessis is somebody that I look up to. His research is phenomenal. He translated from Russian, Verkhoshansky, Bondarchuk, the people that the industry looks to for knowledge about transfer of training in sport, about plyometrics, about all the real big advancements in the last 50 years. Gessis was directly pivotal to all that. He translated the literature. So if you're working with Dr. Gessis and he puts a resistance band on this, but even when he does that, you're not doing the complete skill. You're doing a segment of the skill with resistance for a portion of the skill to increase specific attributes of that skill for a prescribed amount of time.
But is it good enough for me, the hobbyist, the amateur, the regular guy?
So,
you know,
yep. When talking about exercise and especially athletic transference, you've got specifists. You got guys that say, listen, this shit's so fucking complex. Everything has to be extremely specific. And under these set of circumstances, you're going to get one result. Under those set of circumstances, you're going to get different results, even though it's the same person. No, it's highly specific.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got generalists who say, stronger, fitter is fitter.
Right.
Do some CrossFit, hop on in there. Let's see what happens. Then you have holistics.
Sure.
Okay. Now, each school of thought, each perspective is right.
Generalist, holistic, specialist.
And
they're all right.
They're all right, and they are all wrong.
Contextually dependent on the fighter.
Speaking, generalists and holistics are wrong except when they're right. Generally speaking.
And what is the metric for being right? You know,
exactly.
Your fighter wins. Does that make you right?
So the question was originally about hobbyists and good enough, right? Mm-hmm. The Russian author. For the early amateur, for the young child, for the hobbyist, the generalist is the best approach, and the holistics, right? especially the holistics, right? Because if you're doing this shit for health and wellness and well-being, man, take the holistic approach.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll go sit under a tree for a little while and reflect on our soul, all that good stuff.
For health and wellness, the holistic approach is absolutely the right approach. And for diet, that's how I approach. There's one diet that is optimal for health, and a healthy athlete is a good athlete. So I don't subscribe to throwing a bunch of protein shakes into no. The better your diet, the better you perform. The healthier you are, the better you're going to do, right? So you have to be holistic in some things. You have to be generalist. So general fitness is optimal for neophytes, children, and hobbyists, civilians, right? But the more proficient and high level you become, the more specialized your training needs to be.
Well, okay. What could you do for me as a hobbyist, you being a specialist, and we had a day together? You know, could you even do anything for me? And if so, what would the greatest benefit I can gain from that day with you?
Yeah. So it comes down to what is your current individual capacity? What is your ability right now? What goals do you have? And what's our best? How can we best utilize our time to help you increase something that's going to help you improve those goals? Or reach those.
So for me as a hobbyist, as a generalist, for me to be able to maximize my time with someone like you, a professional, I need to be like let's say, for example, I'm a self-defense enthusiast or whatever. I'm a low-level Taekwondo practitioner. I need to go to you and not say, make me better at Taekwondo. I need to go to you and say, help me punch harder with my right hand.
Sure.
Is that accurate?
That's that and achievable, right? Yeah, we can, in an hour's time, we can increase your technical proficiency, your technique. Right now, we can't change your physiology in that amount of time, right? But so that's skill training, right? For strength training, for power training, the best we can do is hope to either give you an experience to show you or help give you a rudimentary understanding or an education so that then you can, because strength physiology takes a lot of time, a lot of consistency for results to occur. But skill can instantaneous. You can have an improvement. You can have an epiphany. You can have an aha moment.
Can those aha moments come on the heels of talking sciencey stuff? And, you know, these must pop up all the time, just being in the environment that you're in, right? That's so cool.
And my fighters, they've been calling them Miyagi moments, where I have a lot of exercises that suck. They're not fun. They're not fun. They're tedious. And if you haven't done them, you suck at them. But then there's that moment where all of a sudden, oh, this is why we've been doing this shit for 3 months, because now I can get my feet all the way up here. Or, oh shit, that little thingy thing you just fucking did with your foot, because I throw my jab, he throws his jab, and I move out the way. Oh, you know, so yeah, Miyagi moments.
And we started this podcast off with, you know, traditional martial arts and all these because this is very fascinating to me, because under these, you know, strict specified training, there can exist kung fu moments on the mountain. That's dope. That's beautiful, man.
And it all comes full circle. For a good 15 years. I was like, I don't want to just leave, go away with the fucking
no Wing Chun, Jeet Kune Do, Chi Sao, Hubad, katas, no.
And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. I'm doing the whole fucking yin yang thing with
oh boy,
engage your rage, but engage it into your technique and not. And oh shit. Okay.
Oh boy. You know, a lot of traditional martial artists, there's something to like for everybody in this little interview, Rage, because that is profound, brother. And that's going to give a lot of people comfort, and it's going to make them feel good about themselves. So please issue a warning. Please issue a warning. Don't go overboard, and doing Chi Sao is not going to make you awesome in the cage. What's a caveat?
No, I don't think I can issue a warning. I can say the intention, it's all, we all have our individual journeys, but the destination is kind of similar for all of us. We're trying to rediscover or discover a truth. And our truth is expressed through the here and now real moment. And for me, it happens to be a violent sport, a competition. But yeah, that's, I don't know. So whether you approach it, like I said, whether you approach it through the Zen way or the Tao way or the Rage way, it's still, how many different languages have a name for an apple? I barely speak English, so right. But it's still, whether you call it an apple in English or what its name is, and we're still talking about the same shit. It's just you have a different experience, you have a different language, you have a different path, but we're still seeking the same truths. Wow.
I don't even should we end it there, bro? Because that, for me, that is profound. That's poetic. That's beautiful. And I hope, a part of why we got into this conversation is because I just wanted to help you exercise these thoughts and to be able to present it to others in a way that may benefit their journey. And I think we've accomplished that, don't you? People are going to be excited to watch this, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if we got into the nitty gritty, but I don't know that we need to, because that means, listen, there's 3 people that would give a shit about that anyway. So,
well, how about this? I'll give you this opportunity, just so that let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot, right? So, the next time we have you on, you're going to have diagrams, right? You're going to have videos that we can watch. You're going to have examples. And we're going to prepare for it, and then we're going to give it a shot.
This was to exercise those demons so I can actually get some sleep. I'd be obsessing about this all night.
Yeah, I'm I guess contradictory like that. So give yourself some time. Go catch up on sleep, and then really think about, because this is a process for you too, right? Right. Which is, it's sort of unfair for us to expect this clear, defined definition when it is a process for you also. So, I guess what I'm asking is, can we join you in that process? And when you come up with something, you give me a shout. You'd be like, "Hey, Paulo, I think this analogy is going to help tie things together," and then we'll do those things.
Okay.
How about that?
That sounds great.
Yeah, and I have some homework for you.
Okay.
All right. So EYR, right? Engage your rage.
Ire.
Find out what else R could stand for.
All right.
Because it's in you. I mean, I'm this history, I don't know. I don't want to be insulting, but there are elements about you that is scientist, and elements about you that is like Kung Fu master sitting under a waterfall.
Right.
Well,
when we first met, you were like, he's half samurai, half Viking.
Yeah, half samurai, half Viking. That totally fits, man. Yeah. So Rage, bro, thank you very much for Wikipedia. Okay, Google, stop it. Google's wanted to tell me about samurais.
Obviously,
Google's wanting to get in on this. Rage, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the people who listen to an hour and 10 minutes of this stuff, they're going to enjoy it. And the ones who watch the first 5 minutes and drop off, well, this wasn't for them anyway. So if you're listening to this right now, Rage and I appreciate you very much, right? And
right on.
And we find you on YouTube, right? Rage Ing. That's your real name, isn't it?
That is my real name. That's a whole other story.
Okay.
For another time. But yeah, that's
right. Rage Ing.
I thought we were going to change the world. I thought we had to be. Well, you know, we didn't have nicknames back then. We just changed the name and fought. Yeah.
And I want to hear more about those days. I want to hear more about the. That sounds like a very fascinating lifestyle, and then we barely skimmed the surface on that. So I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to keep this network open to you for whenever you have these epiphanies and revelations. I hope people enjoy it. But in the meantime, if they want to find you, there it is at the bottom, Rage Inc. Find it on YouTube. Find it on Instagram. Find it on Facebook.
Facebook, and if you're not part of the Fight Focus forum, Fight Focus forum, you know, I'm on there daily.
Yeah,
so that's actually a really good place to interact.
As far as internet forums about fighting goes, anyway, it's still the internet, but it's pretty good. It's pretty. We've got you there. We've got we've got a lot of experts.
I have to defend that. It's a phenomenal forum. It's a phenomenal forum. We have unbelievable amounts of experts on so many different. It's a great forum.
Scientists, lawyers, world championship coaches in boxing and MMA and
special forces, surgeons. It's just on, and you know, Sifus and sensei, and it's a great forum.
It's a Wild West, man, because then you've got guys who are like, you know, just fans talking like experts. You know, once in a while I'll point the finger to myself there. But it's fascinating, and you're such an integral member of that community. You're admin extraordinaire, because not only do you come with experience, not only do you come with knowledge, but you come with this humanity that people respond to. You have a way with words. You have a way with just connecting with people. And bro, that forum would not be where it is without you. And I just wanted to say thanks for that.
Well, thank you. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. For real skis. And I can't wait until these borders open up, and I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to bring my cameras, and now I know who you are.
Yeah.
And
it's going to be awesome. And there's seminars with the Aperture group that's going to be happening that I can't wait for either.
Absolutely. All right, guys. This has been the Aperture Fight Focused podcast. My guest today has been Rage Ing. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Peace.